Hello there and welcome to Tom's Warhammer Minis, the Glottkin, a morbid set of disease-ridden triplets held in check and balance by their posing attitudes and desires. Now, if you're like me and you want to start a Magotkin of Nurgle army soon, then this is the ultimate centerpiece to have. It's been a requested tutorial both here and on my Instagram, and having painted it, I understand why there's never actually been a tutorial done in box art colours before. And that's even when I'm talking about Warhammer Official themselves. It's a highly complex and very rewarding model to pull off. No single colour, even when it comes to contrast painting, can actually achieve the effects, which is why I respectfully that none of the other great YouTubers have ever tried to do it. But that faith that you've all had in me means a lot. Knowing that I could pull it off before even trying, it really hits home hard, and I appreciate that. So, behold the first and only contrast guide for the Glottkin. Grab your paints, grab your brushes, let's get on. And we're beginning with the Glottkin. My goodness, what an awesome model this is, but very complex too. So I'm going to break it down and make it nice and quick and simple as possible given the complexity of it. So to begin with, to note, there is no sub-assemblies. This model is fully built with the two characters on top as well. It is primed completely in white scar, like I normally do with all of my models. I want that nice, bright, vivid finish. Let's focus on the colour to begin with. We're going to talk the mix first. I'm going to explain the sort of complexity of it. I'm going to take 2 parts of Mantis Warrior's Green. You're going to take 2 parts of Gutrippa Flesh. And you're going to take roughly 1 part of Lahmium Medium. Now, you're going to make a big pool of this because there is a lot of flesh to cover. Now, normally we've got to be careful with contrast paints. They will have drying lines, and this model is no exception. There are large surface areas, and actually they all sort of blend into one another, so we have to be even quicker than usual, and that's where the Lahmium Medium is really going to come into help. So if you find you're struggling a bit, add more Lahmium Medium. You obviously don't go overboard with it, but you get the idea. The Mantis Warrior's Green is going to give that nice toxicity to the Gutrippa Flesh, and that's the colour you're seeing here. Now normally we start from top to bottom with contrast paints. I'm going to throw that theory, which is a normal sensible theory, out of the water. You're going to work from the bottom upwards. Now the reason for this is because we need to focus on areas where we can stop painting, let it dry as we move on to a different stage, rather than having those drying lines. And for instance, we start on the leg, for example, say this leg, you've got this nice recessed shade here. We can work around, moving that paint around as quickly as possible, not worrying about that. We can then work down the leg, do the other leg, for example, and then as we move up the body, you kind of want to focus on these areas of fat to avoid these drying lines. So for instance, like a bit there, we just paint that entire section, move on to the other section, moving left to right, or right to left, whichever way you fancy, and just taking it section by section. We're painting over all the details, so for instance the fur, just paint over it. All the eyes, because there's a lot of eyes on this model, don't worry about being neat. We're going to relayer them in different paints later on. Same as the pus spots, just get it over. Same on this arm here, you've got all these spikes which will be done in Skeleton Horde, but it's actually quicker and a lot more simpler just to go straight over them, otherwise you can have drying lines. It's just as simple as that. So there is method to the madness. Just paint it over as quick as possible. So get that done, let it dry, and then we'll move on to the next stage. And exactly like before, in the same method of working from the bottom, taking each section one at a time, focusing on the rolls of fat and moving all the way to the top, we're going to shade our model. The colour is Poxwalker. We are going to thin it down. So in a large pool again, we're going to take 1 part in the ratio of Poxwalker to 2 parts of Lahmium Medium. Essentially, we don't want it to be too strong. We just want a nice subtle tint that still keeps that toxic colour that we've created. And this is the effect that we're looking for. The only other thing to mention is we really want to obviously check for pooling, but where you've got these big rolls of fat around his body, just really settle it into the recesses, creating that darker colour that we see on the box art. Nice and simple, get it done, let it dry. And when it's fully dry, we can then highlight our skin. And next up, we're going to highlight our flesh. Now, it is going to be a dry brush. We are on the big areas, just going to sort of swirl in circular motions around and just really catch all the raised edges. We haven't got to go overboard and over mad. The colour is Gutrippa Flesh, really works nicely here. Essentially, I do want to hit all the pus spots, I do want to hit all the raised edges, but when I say we don't have to go over mad, I have brushed every bit of green, but in a sense we don't have to make it absolutely perfect, because if you look at the box art, there's a lot of purple, there's a lot of yellow. This skin gets really heavily tinted, and for a lot of areas this green is just an underlayer, and by the end you're not even going to be able to see the green. So do take your time, do get it done. It is going to take a little while to catch every edge. At this stage we're not relayering all the sort of skulls and the eyeballs and stuff and the teeth, because there's no point. We're going to be able to paint purple, like over here for instance. There's no point relayering this until the very end, where we could be a lot neater and a lot more precise. So at this stage, just focus on Gutrippa Flesh, don't worry about relayers, and this is what you should be looking at the moment on your model. Next up, we're going to start changing bits of that flesh. So the first colour is Nazdreg Yellow. This is going to be for all the pus spots and the maggots too. So things to note: we don't need to relayer any of it. We'll just leave the skin as it was. We're painting the Nazdreg straight over. It gives this real dark yellow grungy pus look. Now, one of the important things to note is let the paint pool around the outside recess edge of each spot. It's going to dry a sort of darkish brown, but also with a slight red tint. It's just the way it reacts with the green. It's absolutely perfect match in the box art. There are lots and lots of spots, so take your time, use the box art as reference, and there are lots of hidden ones too. We're talking about things like this, where they're all inside these broken bits of bone and tusks. Not all of them, this one doesn't, but really check, just use the box art. Same on the feet too, on the big toenails. Now moving on from that, we're going to take Athonian Camoshade, and this is to tint certain parts of the skin. So we go back over here, you've got these kind of scales, and it's primarily here, as you can see, and you just got a couple of the same scales up on the top. Just paint it over there. It's just to create a different tint of skin tone. And moving on from that, on the back, on the very top, you've got all this fur, pure black Templar, paint it straight on top. Nice and simple. Do that and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to tint that flesh to that real sickly purpley dark sort of pinky tone. Let's talk the mix first, because that's important. You're going to take 4 parts of Volupus Pink. You're going to mix that, because it's quite transparent, with 1 part of Sigvuld Burgundy. This is going to apply a thickness, as well as that nice real richness that we see in the colour. And for control purposes, we do need Lahmium Medium, so take 1 part of that. So 4 parts Volupus Pink, 1 part Sigvuld Burgundy, 1 part Lahmium Medium. Now, best advice, follow the box art. Look where this skin tone is really sort of bleeding through and blotchy. We are going to do a recess shade around all the spots. It is going to be blotchy in certain areas, and I'll talk about that in a minute. For areas like this, we're just going to paint it on, and then you're going to have to do feathering. Now, feathering is where you've painted it on. Now, say for instance, I've painted it here, and I've gone around here, where it's green, with that purple paint that's applied. Wash the brush, and while it's damp, not completely wet, blend that colour out. You're going to create this natural transitioning blend. Essentially, with contrast paints, water breaks down the molecules. So we're using a damp brush to break down the paint molecules and bleed it out into the actual skin tone, creating that nice transition. It is going to be rough in certain areas. So this area, particularly when you do this arm, is going to be very, very rough. It's not going to look perfect. Now, with Nurgle models, we can add a lot more later on, which is what I'm going to do to really create that perfect kind of blend and transition, that sort of disgusting kind of vibe. But in areas like this, it did get rather rough. The paint I'm going to use next, when it was completely dry, is Magos Purple. Now, simply, I've not thinned it down. I've just literally painted it on. And rather than having it in a thick area, just moving the paint rapidly around, just create a real nice transition. It's just subtle, but it just really helps. We are going to add things later on, so if it's not 100% perfect, don't worry yet. But with the previous paints, the 4-part Volupus Pink, the 1 part Sigvuld Burgundy, etc., we are doing all the intestines. You're doing the inside of this sort of mouth and the tongue. You've also got the intestines up here, as well as this kind of spidery looking heart thing that's up there. Simply, this is why we haven't relayered all those teeth yet. It's not worth our time or effort, and it just makes life so much simpler. So take your time, follow the box art, and just do as much or as little as you want, especially around the spot areas. But the more you do, the greater it looks. But this is the kind of effect we're looking for. Again, if it does get blotchy, use that Magos Purple to help blend it out. For example, here, got a bit blotchy here, and I've used that Magos Purple, as you can see, and just feather it out again. But it looks great. We're going to use other paints later on. This is a look we should have at this stage. If it's not perfect, don't worry. Let's let it dry, and we're going to move on to the next colour. Next up, we are taking Berserker Bloodshade. Now, we're going to do two different things with this one. We're using the power of that sort of blood redness, but also the thinness of the shade to do two different things. We're going to enrich the main body areas, where the actual purple, that Sigvuld Burgundy, that Volupus Pink mix is heavy. So for instance, the arms that you can see here, the lips, the tentacles, you've got the knee pad joint, and you've got this bit under his groin, going around the back there. We're doing that as an overall kind of wash, just to really enrich the colours, but we're taking it further. Essentially what I've done is I've painted pretty much the whole arm, blending it out towards the green, just as an example here. Same on this side. Is going to really start correcting those kind of mistakes, the blotchy areas where the feathering is just not quite 100% perfect, and it just creates this nice transition from the sort of green Nurgle flesh to this sort of rotten sore flesh that you can see here. All the intestines, that kind of stuff, that's been done in the Berserker Bloodshade too. So just use it to really enhance the model, correct areas that you want to correct, and just make a nice, real bold kind of vivid look. This is what we should be looking for, and as you can see, it's only enhancing the model beautifully. So get that done, let it fully dry. We're going to darken the tail tip here like we see in the box art in the next bit. So yeah, just let it dry and move on to the next up. We're talking about the tail tip that's down here. It's slightly darker from the main skin. We're going to take Shyish Purple. Simply mix that in a 1-to-1 ratio with Lahmium Medium and just paint it straight over the tail. There's nothing really more to say for that bit. We're also going to go up to the top here, where you've got this slightly brown flesh that we see at the top. This is quite simply done 1-to-1 Cygor Brown, once again with Lahmium Medium. Just paint it straight on, obviously being careful with the other details that are already in place. Get that done and we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, we're going to do a bit of dry brushing. Now to begin with, the first colour is Dechala Lilac. Now this is going to be over the most prominent details that are now this kind of red warish colour, that sort of pinky purple that we've been building up. So things like the tongue, this kind of skin, the main arm, big areas, the guts and stuff, and the intestines. I've also done these up here. Just a nice simple dry brush just to catch those raised edges like you can see on the kneecap here. Moving on from that, we're going to take a small dry brush. This is once again Deepkin Flesh. And this is going to be over these really weird prominent veins that really bulge out at the bottom on the underarm here. It just matches the box art a little bit more, and it just makes sense. Now once that's done, we're going to be able to then relayer all of those details. So Corax Whites, this is all our teeth, but I've also done some of the pus spots, as well as the skulls and bones and all that kind of stuff. So I want to kind of show you the pus spots. They're obviously going to be redone in Nazdreg Yellow. I'm not going to walk through that step with you. You should have, be able to realise that having done all the others. It's just they're not up to par of the others. Might as well relayer them, and that's the beauty of painting. You can correct your mistakes. So this is exactly why we did the teeth, or not to do the teeth, we painted straight over them to begin with. It's actually easier when you think of all this combined flesh. We need to get the colours on as quick as possible. It makes sense to relayer them now. So get that done and we'll move on to our next stage, which is going to be painting all of our bone details. And next up, we're painting all that bone tusk, the teeth, all that kind of stuff, including the little Nurgling's teeth here, and I'm including all the skulls that you see dotted around. And I have gone and done the little Nurgling here too, just as a base coat. So let's talk the colour mix. Obviously bone, traditionally, skeleton horde in contrast painting, but it is Nurgle and I want a kind of sickly warm look to it. So I'm going to take Aggaros Dunes. I'm going to take into a palette 2 parts of this. This is our sickly brown colour. I'm going to mix 2 parts of skeleton horde. That's our traditional bone colour. And for control, because there's a lot of large surface areas, we're taking 1 part of Lahmium Medium and nice and simply painting it straight on all the surfaces. Obviously the tusks, this one being an example here, work from the top to the bottom because of gravity. Ones like this we could just work sideways, but just keep an eye for pooling. Obviously when these kind of tusks, it's the under part where it would pool, but Lahmium Medium will give us a good amount of flow. Just don't overload the brush. That's the only real advice I can give you there. Now once it's completely dry, I am taking Reikland Fleshshade, and I'm putting this, not thin down, but straight over all of those colours. The only bits I haven't done is the actual Nurgling here. I've left him in the primary base coat we just talked about. But this is going to tint our skeleton sort of bone colour to a sort of warmer look. Almost like it's a bit more living, which kind of works with this whole Nurgle theme. So, get that done. And then moving on, while that's all drying, we're going to focus on tinting the skin around here. So when you look at the box art, it's got a slightly darker green tint to the actual rest of the colour. We can easily achieve this with Nuln Oil. Just nice and simply paint it straight on. Once again, checking for pooling. Although it's quite easy in this area just to paint it all around and just get this nice darkened tint, but still keeping it on par, similar to the rest of the main colour. Nice and simple. Next up, we're doing a whole host of colours here. So let's start with the toenails. They do differ from the rest of the bones on the body. And nice and simply, we've got the skeleton horde in place. We're going to simply paint black Templar straight over them. It kind of has that bone under there, but obviously they're rotten, they're mouldy, they've gone black. Just like Nurgle would do. Moving on from that, we're going to go and focus on the actual belt going around the waist here. Nice and simple. Pure Gore Grunta Fur, that's all I'm painting over that, and then you've got the strap that goes around the leg too. Now, keeping Gore Grunta Fur to hand, we're going to thin this down in a 1-to-1 mix with, of course, Lahmium Medium. And this is going to be for the horns. Now, essentially, for every horn, we're going to paint from the top to the bottom, 2/3 of the way down, wash your brush, and while it's damp, not completely sodden, feather out that colour into the skeleton horde to create that first natural transitioning blend. When you look at the box art, it gets very dark at the tips, sort of that Cygor Brown, Black Templar kind of vibe, but it goes to a sort of more warm brown, then to skeleton horde. So that's a transition we need to get there first, and that is Gore Grunta Fur. So just take your time on the real big ones. So for example, we take one here. I do start 2/3 of the way down to begin with, because I can just feather it out. And because of the Lahmium Medium that's present in the mix, it means there's not going to be a dry line up here, and we can just paint the rest of it as per normal. So take your time, get that done. Moving on from that, we're going to take Agrax Earthshade while that's all drying. And this is going to be simply for the ropes. Now I did relayer them in Corax White, but you've got the ropes here. Agrax Earthshade as a base coat is a perfect rope colour. And again, while we're waiting for things to dry, we're going to turn around, we're going to focus on the back banner here. It is red, but when we look at the box art, it's a very vibrant, rich red. So getting that underlayer in place first is really important. The colour here is Gryph-hound Orange. What you're seeing here is a 3-to-1 mix of 3 parts of Gryph-hound Orange to 1 part of Lahmium Medium to help you with the flow. Now, I don't do non-metallic metal, so just paint straight over that Nurgle symbol. We'll be doing that in proper metallics when we come to that stage. Next up, we're going to start tinting those horns to that real dark part that we see at the top there. The colour is Cygor Brown. We're going to thin this down in a 1-to-1 mix with Lahmium Medium, obviously, because the Lahmium Medium is going to really help us with the feathering process once again. So, start at the top of the tips, paint it 1/3 of the way down, wash your brush while it's damp, feather out that colour into the Gore Grunta Fur mix and the skeleton horde, and you'll have this nice 3-tone transition of dark to mid-tier to light bone. Looks really effective. The only thing to note is obviously with the little teeth on the hand here and the little teeth just around the mouth, we're not focusing on those. We're keeping that in the primary colour that we did, which was the skeleton horde and Aggaros Dunes. Now, using the same Cygor Brown mix, we're going to work on the belt here. Essentially what we're going to do, paint it into all the areas up to the edges, not including the edges. It means the belt is 100% done. We haven't got to then highlight it at all, as long as you don't paint over those edges. It's just a really cool way of contrast painting. If you see my other tutorials, you know exactly what that applies. In that exact same method, we're going to go to the back on that red cloak. We're going to take Bar Red. Now, it's going to be quite bright and vivid. We're going to turn it down in the next stage, but I want to kind of show you this idea. Once again, painting it into the main areas, up to the edges, not including the edges, so we've got this nice natural highlight. As I say, it's going to be dark, bright and vivid. It's going to be a bit glarish, but don't worry, we'll tone it down to really give it a really cool look. But essentially, this is the kind of colour that's matching the box art. So get that done, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to go back to tinting the skin just a little bit more. Now, in our next mix, we're going to take roughly 2 parts of Militarum Green to a mix with 1 part of Lahmium Medium. Now this is for the bottom of the feet. When you look at the box art, they do have this nice tonal shift where here you've got this main sort of bright flesh that we created at the beginning, and it blends this very subtly into this darker flesh from here to here. So essentially we're going to paint that mix that we just created, the 2 parts Minotaur green, 1 part Lahmium Medium. Start here, feather it out this way, and then just paint the rest of the knee. Both knees do exactly the same. Here's the other one. Obviously avoid all this vein area, avoid the pus spots, and it will look phenomenal. Now moving on from that, we are going to take another tinting paint. We're going to take Pterodon Turquoise. We're not filling this down. This is in its purest form. And what I've done here, essentially it's for the main eye, and you'll see this on the box art. I've just painted the eyelids with it. Nice and simple. But I've gone one step further and I've painted all of the eyes and all the areas around here. So just like a sort of edge highlight kind of base coating around all the different eyes. It just makes them pop out that a little bit more. Now moving on from that, we're going to take another mix. We're going to take Cygor scales this time. And we're going to thin this down in a 1-to-1 mix once again with Lahmium Medium, and it's going to give us a lot of control in this 1-to-1 mix. Essentially this is for all the other tentacles. So we did the ones in pink to begin with. Every other tentacle has this sort of real bright, vibrant, sort of turquoisey, sea blue kind of jade effect. This is what it's for. So paint the whole tentacle, paint a certain area as much as you want up into the sort of area where it joins and connects, and just feather it out. Nice and simple, and you can see the kind of effect that we've gone for here. Really, really awesome. And finally, we're taking pure Berserker Bloodshade. That's for the red cloth, both sides. Really sort of tones it down and brings those highlights together nicely, completing the red completely, which is perfect. But we're also going to thin this down 4 parts of Lahmium Medium to 1 part Berserker Bloodshade. And essentially, I've just painted this into each of the eyeballs. Now, it's very subtle. As you can see, you can barely notice it, but it's just that subtle twinkle you want, which just creates this kind of bloodshot effect that we're going to build up to later on. So just paint that into each of the eyes, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to finish off getting the main part of the Glottkin battle ready. So this is going to be all the metallic details down here. I'm focusing on the metallic details up here, and then we'll be working on the characters. So to begin with, let's talk silver. The colour I'm using here is Iron Warriors. Now, we will be doing the metallics up here separately. So just focus on the main part of the Glottkin to begin with. You've got the main chain here, the sort of belts, sort of chain buckles, this kind of stuff that goes around. And the same here, and on the back attached to the cape there. So basically I'm in Iron Warriors. And then for our shade paint, we want something that's going to be nice and dark, but also has a nice contrasting colour against all that bright, vibrant green. And the colour I've used is Drakenhof Nightshade. It works really nicely here. Now for our bronze details, I've gone with Screaming Bell. It's a real nice vibrant bronze. So you've got the main ball here. I have done, as an alternative, it is done in silver on the box art, but I've done it in bronze because it's got Nurgle symbols, that bit there. You've got the main back of the cape. And then the one that differs is these little trinkets up here. Now you get to choose which ones you want and which position you want them in. But it's hard to see really what the detail is on them. But as best as I can tell from the box art, they are done in bronze, so I've base coated them entirely with the Screaming Bell. The shade paint for our bronze details is traditional. We're going Reikland Fleshshade. Now, you do get this torch. This is nice and easy and quick to do in contrast. It's still primed, obviously, in white scar, because we primed the whole model. When I paint the next paints, understand that I have not allowed this area to dry at all. So I apply the first one, and while it's wet, apply the second paint. While it's wet, apply the third, etc. So to begin with, let's talk an all-over base coat, and the colour I've used was a Nazdreg Yellow. This is really nice. It has that sort of orangey recessed shade, but bright, vibrant yellow, as you can see. Now, while it's wet, I've taken Gryph-hound Orange. Simply starting from the top, working 2/3 of the way down, and just let it naturally mix in with that already wetness of the Nazdreg Yellow. Again, before it's dried, while it's still wet, take Blood Angel's Red. This is for the top third. As you can see, just the same principle. So this is going to be the top third, 2/3 orange. The rest of it is all Nazdreg Yellow. And then finally, for the tips, a bit of Black Templar. And we're using the Black Templar. You've got these little coals that go around the front and the back. Just simply paint it over them too. Nice and simple, and the torch is finished. Moving on, we're going to start focusing on our 2 main characters up the top here. But I've also taken advantage of doing the base. Now, if you are copying along, then what I've used here is Stir the Mud. Now, this is a brand new pot, just to give you an idea of how much you're going to need. It's roughly about half a pot I've used. Now, it's not because I've gone really thick, it's just because it's standing on its two legs. It's not like the Great Unclean one. There's a lot of surface area to cover the paint. It just gives you an idea of how much you need, should you need to buy any. Now, I have shaded that. And once that was obviously dry, and the shade I've used is Agrax Earthshade. But keeping Agrax Earthshade to hand, I've painted all the ropes up here on the two characters, but also the wood. Now the wood I am going to do in Wildwood in the next step, but Wildwood's a bit of a funny paint. It's quite thin and it does tend to flake off, certainly in my experiences. So having this as an underlayer is just going to help that paint in the long term. Moving on from that, let's focus on the flesh tones. We've got two distinct ones, but we need that underlayer in place. The colour is Reikland Fleshshade, just a simple base coat over all the exposed skin. Now for our character at the front here, he does have this cloth at the front, but the back is exposed, but the cloth goes under the back, as you can see. Obviously you've got the main belly of this guy. I have painted the Reikland Fleshshade over the bandages, the ropes, which are going to be down in brown. That's what that brown leather. Again, this is just an underlayer, so we just paint straight over it. Moving on from that, we've got the horns. The horns, nice and simple, skeleton horde. I'm not mixing the Aggaros Dunes this time, though if you want to, you can absolutely do that. But the horns, as you can see, just skeleton horde. Obviously, I've done Reikland Fleshshade on the hand and this little tentacle here. There is another tentacle to be aware of, just here. And I've done that, just again as an underlayer, though it's going to be very different from the final sort of product, so to speak. And then we've got the little nurglings. You've got the one here. Obviously, I started this one here, but we'll shade him in a minute. And then you've got the one that you can attach to the base. Now, as a base coat, I've done Mantis Warriors Green. It's nice and vibrant. Obviously, Skeleton Horde for the bones and the teeth. On the back one that's hanging on for his dear life, we've got an exposed tongue and exposed intestines, just for Volupus Pink. Again, if you want to add that Sigvuld Burgundy that we did previously, go ahead. But for here, I've just done pure Volupus Pink. And then for all the spots, including on the nurglings, Nazdreg Yellow. Nice and simple. We're going to be using a lot of colours that are very similar to what we've already done. So get that done and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're going to shade our little nurglings. First of all, I did take Poxwalker and I applied it over the skin of this nurgling and the one that's in the sort of bone tusk here. The other nurgling that's on the back, nice and simple. I wanted slightly different variation, so I shaded it with Bale Tan Green. Obviously, you can shade it in whatever colours you want. Moving on from that, I'm once again going back to Berserker Bloodshade. I've applied this over the severed hand that's on the staff and just the raw bit of the tentacle that's been severed there. Moving on from that one, we're painting all the wood, and this is also for the leather straps that goes around this character here. Simple Wildwood, just letting it really settle into the recesses of the leather straps and creates that nice fine edge highlight that's already in place. And the previous Reikland Fleshshade really works wonders here. And the same for all the wood, obviously being careful going around the ropes, but start at the top, work your way down, and you get this nice strong finish. Moving on from that, we're going to tint the skin. Now, both our characters have two distinct colours. Our one at the back here is more sickly looking, the one at the front is more purple looking. We can achieve that with the Reikland Fleshshade that was in place by simply shading a different shade over that. So for the character at the front, for the purple, just shade Druchii Violet. And it's not going to make a huge difference if you go over the Nazdreg Yellow pus spots. It doesn't really alter them at all. So get that in place. For our more sickly looking character at the back, I've taken Mortarian Grime. Now this is very subtle. It really just tints the Reikland Fleshshade that we put previously just to a more sort of sickish hue, which is exactly what we want for the box art. Moving on from that, I have taken Mantis Warriors Green once more, and this is just for the dripping slime that we find on this character. So you've got one coming from his arm here, and you've got this bit here from the sort of intestine that he's yanked out of him, and the two bits underneath. And once our Druchii Violet is dry, I have taken Black Templar. This is for the exposed nails. So you've got the nails on his toe, or foot should I say, that's down here. And then you've got sort of big nail that I've done on the hand. And then you've got the little claw-like nails here. And there's a few that are exposed here on the flame, Obviously be careful around that flame, we don't want to catch that and spoil it. So get those details done and we'll move on to the next set of colours. Next up, we're focusing our attentions on our front character here. So we're going to start with the cape that's going around him. It is that sort of pinky screamer horror kind of colour, but it does have a slight purple edge to it. We're going to create a mix, nice and simple, 4 parts of Sigvuld Burgundy, and in that mix we're going to add 1 part of Leviathan Purple, just to push the consistency towards purple, but still keeping that Sigvuld Burgundy as the main colour. And for flow and control, we're taking 1 part of Lahmium Medium. Nice and simple, we're painting that all over the cloak, inside and out. So the inside being just under this section here. It's quite easy, just take your time. You can reach all the areas, even when it's fully assembled. And once it's completely dry, we just want to sort of put that saturation and depth more to the point, and Caribou Crimson works absolute wonders here, so paint that straight over when it's done. Moving on from that, there is the bronze details, so the bell and obviously the flames and stuff that we did here. I'm not going to go for the colours, it's exactly the same as here. So all the bronze details I've done the same, all the fire the same as the Coxagor scales on the tentacles, and that includes the one that's behind here too. So moving on from that, the one colour that is slightly different is going to be Snakebite Leather. And this is just for the little bag that's hanging on the staff there. Moving on from that, we've got the flames as well that's coming out. There's sort of this magically glow. Now, I have created a mix, and this is the mix I use for verdigris. So you're going to take 2 parts, or 2 to 3 parts of Briar Queen Chill to roughly 1 part of Lilac Oxide. And it just creates this real cool sort of glowing effect that we absolutely want. Just paint that straight over the white scar. It's nice and simple. So get that done. Same with the silver details, just to mention them. The classic, same as we did on the previous silver. Fill those in too. The only things that are going to be different are the actual icons on his body and the blades. I'm going to be doing them a different colour. Our next part of the Glottkin is going to focus on the character at the back here. Now, just to mention, I'm going to show the back in a second, but all the metallics, so the bronze and the silver, is the exact same colours that we've done previously. So there's no need to go into detail of what they are. You'll know what they are by now. So let's focus on the distinctive colours, and that's the armour, as well as the cloth that we see at the front and the back there. We'll start with the cloth. Nice and simple, it's a darker, grungier tone when we look at the box art with a slight reddish hue. I've achieved this with Flesh Terror's Red in a 1-to-1 mix. So 1 part Flesh Terror's Red, 1 part Black Templar. And nice and simply paint it over the cloth. Moving on, we have the armour. And if you know my kind of style in how I can really, empower contrast paints and make it really heavy metal without doing highlights, you'll know what we're doing here. We're creating an underlayer. In the next step, I'll show you how to finish off the armour, where you paint up to the edges, not including the edges. It just means it's fully highlighted, heavy metal style. It's really effective and cool. The colour we're using here is Warp Lightning, but it's also just darkened down ever so slightly. So 1 part Warp Lightning and 1 part Black Templar. And that's going to give us the sort of highlight colour that we need, as well as the underlayer at the same time. So get those done, let it dry, and we'll move on to the next step. Next up, we're finishing off that armour. And as you can see, I painted on the colour that I was talking about, where it goes up to the edges, but not including the edges, leaving that highlight in place. It's like a moot green highlight, and it's absolutely perfect. It's heavy metal style, and it just finishes off the armor 100%. The color mix here is going to be Pterodon Turquoise. Now, I've taken it in sort of brush loads into a palette. So I've taken 3 brush loads, so 3 parts of Pterodon Turquoise, mixed it with 3 parts of Black Templar. It's going to just dull it down a little bit. And then 1 part of Lahmium Medium, which is just going to help with the flow. And like I say, paint it on the surfaces up to the edges, not including the edges. And it means all that armour is 100% done. We haven't got to touch it later on. But keeping Pterodon Turquoise to hand, I've gone and painted here the little trinkets and bugs kind of style. So you've got 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, and then 1 here as well. It might not match the box art, but it just gives a different area of interest and colour, especially as we've got a lot going on up here. It's just nice to have distinguishing details run and all blending into one. So get that done, and we'll move on to the metallics. And it's time to base coat our remaining details. So we can start the silver, and this is for the blade up here and the blade here. We want it brighter because I'm going to be doing some different effects of them. So the colour is going to be Iron Hand Steel. Now, when you look at the actual box art, our front character here, doesn't actually have bronze detailing in the sort of armor or the sort of symbol of Nurgle here. It's more gold. So going classic, I've base coated it in Retributor armor. So we'll let those dry and then we'll shade. And finally we're going to shade those metallic details. So to begin with, let's focus on the Iron Hand Steel. I want a kind of plaguish green hue, so take Mantis Warrior's green and thin it down in a 1-to-1 mix with Lahmium Medium, and I painted this straight over both blades. And for our gold, nice, classic and simple Reikland Fleshshade. Now at this stage, our model is completely battle ready. It looks absolutely incredible. It's almost at a point where you don't actually have to do anything at all, but obviously, being a centerpiece, we want to take it to the next step. I am going to apply highlights. So if you're happy with the model and it's finished for you, great. If you want to take it further, we'll keep on going. And next up, we're going to start our highlights. And to begin with, what we're going to do is we're going to take advantage of the fact that it's a huge model. So we're going to do a lot of dry brushing. So to begin with, the first colour is going to be Screaming Skull. And this is going to be the majority of our dry brushing highlights. So first of all, this is going to be for all of our tusks and bone details. But what we want to do is we want to be careful. We don't really want to hit the Cygor Brown areas, but we also do. We want to hit these kind of edges where the sort of grooves and ridges are. But rather than actually tackling the sort of flat areas, we're not going for that. Obviously for our main bone areas, we do want to hit, but we're going to take advantage of the Screaming Skull. We're going to hit all the pus spots, or as many as we want to, just to give it that sort of extra brightness. We're going to attack some of the skin as well around those areas. We're not going all over the skin because we did that with the Deepkin Flesh earlier, but rather nice and simply, we're just hitting different areas just to create different kinds of highlights. It just works really nicely, especially on Nurgle models where the more random it is, the actual better the overall look will be. Other areas we're going to hit is the wildwood for the staffs and stuff, and all the padded sort of, the ropes. I'm going to hit them too. Nice and simple there. So it's things like that. As much or as little as you want to do. And obviously all the little teeth and stuff we can hit there. And again, because we're highlighting skin, it doesn't matter if that Screaming Skull hits the flesh. Moving on from that, we've got some other more simpler ones. I'm going to take Stormhose Silver and dry brush this over all our metallic details. Nice and simple, gives them a nice, bright, vibrant shine. I'm going to add some technical stuff to them later on, just to really enhance them more. I've taken Wild Rider Red, and this is for our character at the back. This is just to hit the cloth, both front and back. I've taken Gorse Blaster Green, and this is to dry brush all those kind of scarab and little trinket bits that you can see dotted around, as well as the tentacles. Just a slight light dry brush just really picks out some of the edge highlights on there as well. I've taken White Scar, and nice and simply done a dry brush on this kind of magic that's coming out of the hands here that we did in that sort of 3rd degree blue. I've taken Storm Vermin Fur, and I've done this over the fur that we see here. Just to note the Cygor Brown and sort of Volupus Pink details, as well as the Mantis Warrior's Green. That was Screaming Skull too, forgot to mention that. But the Storm Vermin Fur for the fur here, as well as the little sort of nails and stuff that we see on this character. Nice and simple. And then finally we can take advantage of dry brushing using Pink Horror. And this is for all the edge highlights that are really nice and crisp on this character here. We can just very gently hit them. Now for the Screaming Skull, just to mention, I use a medium-sized dry brush. For the rest of it, I've swapped to a small-sized dry brush. Just makes sense because I want to catch big areas with the other colours, whereas the Screaming Skull, I'm happy to catch lots of different areas. So get those done. That's going to be all our dry brushing. We've just got a couple of edge highlights to do next. Next up, this is going to be our final highlight because we're going to do a couple of extra things to really push it to a greater level. We're going to take Flayed One Flesh. Nice and simply spot and a couple of edge highlights on the skin. This includes the purple tinted skin and this skin here. Or on this one, it's going to be very subtle in the sense it's practically the same as the colour. It just makes it very nice and neat and crisp. So get that done. And the edge highlights are done, and then what we're going to do is we're going to focus on all the eyeballs, and when I say eyeballs, we're talking a ton of them. So first of all, we're going to start on our Nurglings, because they're nice and simple. So for instance, you've got this one here, and I'm going to show you an example because I've done this on all 3 of them. We're going to paint the eyes in Evil Sun Scarlet, let it dry, and then just add a smaller dot of Lugganath Orange. Gives a nice little vibrant glow with that red around the background. So that's really nice and simple. The actual eyes on the Glottkin are a bit more complex. Now, you can see the one here, but what I'm going to show you is the ones on the back, because this is the best example that I can give you. We've obviously got the Berserker Bloodshade in effect already. We did that when we tinted it down over the eyeballs. What we're going to do, we're first of all going to take Lothern Blue. Obviously use any colour you want, And you're going to create a rough circle shape around each of the eyes. So like you can see, this is our iris in each of the eyes. Fill the circle in, make it completely blue. And the beauty of it here, you haven't really got to thin your paint down. By making it slightly thicker, you're going to see it's a noticeable thickness on the thing. In a sense, it's like stuck on, which makes it look like there's an extra bit there. This really adds to the effect. But let that dry. In the center of those eyes, do a spot of Abaddon Black. And that's going to be our pupil. Let that dry. And you're going to take it one step further with the tiniest tip on a very small brush, a tiny dot of white scar. This just gives that kind of light reflection. And you can do this on each of them. Obviously, the bigger the pupil, the easier this is going to be. What I'm going to then do is add the veins. And this is a really cool trick. So I've used a small layer brush to do this. Just take Berserker Bloodshade, have the tiniest amount of tip, and just do random lines. Have some that are a bit stronger, so have a little bit more paint on, and some that are weaker, and it just really adds to that effect. Then, what we want to do for all of the eyes, and I've done this for the Nurgling, I've used Ard Coat, any gloss varnish will do, paint that over, and you get this sickly wet look, which you can see in the reflection on the lights, and it just looks absolutely awesome. So get that done and we'll move on to the next step. And finally, we're going to add a couple of technical paints and technical things just to really make this model pop to the real ultra next level. So to begin with, we're going to create some rust effects, and this is going to be on all of our silver details. The color here is going to be Troll Slayer Orange. We are going to thin it down to a milk consistency. So take 1 part of Troll Slayer Orange to roughly 6 parts of Lahmium Medium. And like I say, it's going to be very thin, very glazy, and we want it as random as possible. Just apply it random areas, and I'm just going to use a chain as an example here. I've done it on all the metal at the back here as well. Just random splodges here and there, just to add this extra bit of colour and depth that it is rusting, it is dirty, it is old. Add as little or as much as you want. On the same note, we're going to add verdigris. Now, if you see my other tutorials, you'll know exactly the scheme I like to use, and this is about creating control. So take roughly 2 to 3 parts of Briar Queen Chill, and mix that with 1 part of Lilac Oxide. It keeps the same colour of Lilac Oxide, that verdigris effect. It just turns it into a contrast paint, giving us control. Again, as little as much as you like over all of our bronze details. I have done it on the gold too. I know you don't get verdigris on that. It just makes sense to add it here. Everything else is rusting and decaying. Why not have that there? I've also applied small amounts of that to the base as well, just to add a bit of extra depth and colour. Now, I do love Nurgle's Rot. It is a Nurgle monster. We can't not have it. So we are adding Nurgle's Rot. Now, I have applied this to the base, as you can see just there at the bottom of the camera. But I've applied this in a couple of select areas too. So I have applied random amounts inside the open mouth and the tongue here. It is glossy in nature, so when it dries, it's going to give this sickly kind of finish. Now I've applied some heavier amounts and some smaller amounts, just as random as possible, just to give it this real sickly hue. I've done it on his bottom lip as well, as if he's drooling, because after all, it's Nurgle, it's disgusting, so why not? And finally, our final paint is going to be Blood for the Blood God. Nice and simple. I've stippled it on, so using a small dry brush, just random stippling onto the blade, both sides, blade down here, but also the guts and intestines. So I've done a bit down here, and I've done a bit along the intestine that he's holding up here. Nice and simple with that. Our model is 100% done, and it looks incredible. All I'm going to do now is add some tufts and bits to the base, neaten up the rim, and it's complete. And there we have it. My Glottkin is complete. I'm just going to say it as it is. What a truly incredible model. I mean, the design, the looks, the challenge of completing it, it is brilliant. It's both terrifying and wonderful at the same time. And I'm glad to present to you the first and only contrast painting tutorial for this awesome model. It has been a joy painting it. Now, without doubt, it will inspire. So please do be sure to give it a like. And with so many like-minded people excited about the new Magotkin releasing soon, please do share this video too. Not only will it inspire them, it will help them find my channel. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because what I say is absolutely true. Supporting me means I get to continue supporting you, the awesome Warhammer community. So, until the next video, do look after yourselves, and happy hobbying.